I want you to close your eyes for a second, if you can, and just try to imagine, well, nothing.
Which is surprisingly hard to do.
Right. It really is. And I don't mean like an empty white room or the vacuum of space or even a comforting, quiet darkness. I mean a literal yawning void. Just this ancient, gaping nothingness that exists before time, before light, before the concept of shape or sound even means anything.
It's completely incomprehensible.
Yeah. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. But out of that absolute zero, out of that terrifying, suffocating silence, comes the spark that eventually builds the foundational blueprints for, like, practically everything we know today.
And just lingering on that image of the void for a moment, it is deeply unsettling.
Totally.
Because we are so used to modern creation stories where a benevolent force brings order, right? Where someone flicks on the lights and says that it is good.
Right, there's usually a plan.
Exactly. But this text insists that the universe starts with a terrifying absence. It's this progression from formless, incomprehensible forces to the hyperspecific, deeply flawed human condition.
Yeah.
We're essentially tracing the lineage of our own minds, starting from the dark.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking this massive, incredibly comprehensive transcript from the Tremoria YouTube channel titled The Entire Story of Greek Mythology.
And our mission today is not just to sit here and, recite ancient fairy tales.
Yo, definitely not. Or give you a dry genealogy of who begat who.
Right. We want to uncover why these specific stories have endured for thousands of years.
Yeah, how did they serve as the ancient world's way of processing raw power, devastating trauma, and grief? And most importantly, why does any of this actually matter to you, the listener, sitting here today?
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through these sources, it is like the most fascinating, violent, tragic novel I've ever picked up.
It really is the ultimate human drama, just projected onto the cosmos. And I want to emphasize to you, listening right now, that we shouldn't look at these myths as dead history. This isn't dusty trivia to win a pub quiz.
No.
This is living memory. These are the earliest psychological blueprints of humanity. They still actively shape how we view heroism, how we grapple with the inevitability of fate, and how we process tragedy.
By understanding the architecture of these myths, we are really just understanding the architecture of ourselves.
Beautifully put.
So the source text is very specific about that starting point we were just talking about. The universe starts with chaos.
Right.
And the text notes that chaos isn't disorder, the way we casually use the word today. It's not a messy bedroom or a chaotic intersection.
No, the Greek root of the word literally implies a yawning gap.
A chasm.
Exactly.
And from that void, we get Gaia, which is the earth, Tartarus, the impenetrable abyss beneath the earth, and Eros.
And Eros is really fascinating here.
Yeah, tell me about Eros, because that surprised me.
Well, it's desire or love, but not romantic love. It's the binding agent, the gravitational pull that makes creation, the combining of elements, even possible.
That makes so much sense, like the gravity of the early universe.
Precisely. Then comes Nyx, the night, and Erebus, the darkness. It's all incredibly elemental.
But then Gaia, the earth, brings forth Uranus, the sky. And this is where the trouble starts, right? Because their relationship kind of sets the tone for the entire mythology.
Oh, absolutely. The union of Gaia and Uranus is the first great marriage of the cosmos, but it is entirely devoid of romance.
It's purely functional.
It is a marriage of raw elemental necessity. Picture it physically. Uranus, the dome of the sky, presses down relentlessly upon Gaia, the earth. There is no space between them.
Wow.
And she gives birth to the Titans, these towering primordial beings, but she also gives birth to monstrous children.
Right, the Cyclops.
Yes, with their single, terrifying forge fire eyes and the hecaton chairs.
Those guys are wild.
Unimaginable beings. The text describes them as having 50 heads and 100 arms each. Pure, chaotic, unbridled force.
And Uranus looks at these monstrous kids and is just horrified. I mean, he's the lord of the sky. He represents the overarching heavens, and he is disgusted and terrified by their grotesque strength.
He wants perfection.
Right. So he doesn't just banish them, he forces them back into Gaia's womb.
It's horrific.
He literally shoves them deep into the caverns of the earth, sealing them away out of sight. The text says Gaia groaned beneath their weight and the pain of it.
It's such a visceral, agonizing image.
Yeah, the earth herself is bloated and just stretched by the suppressed power of her own children.
You really have to look at how the early Greeks viewed the natural world to understand the psychology here.
Okay, how so?
Well, the physical world around them was forged by violent, uncontrollable forces. We're talking about a landscape defined by active volcanoes, sudden earthquakes, tidal waves that could wipe out a coastal settlement in minutes.
Right, they lived in a very volatile environment.
Exactly. And the mythology reflects this terror. The physical world wasn't born of a peaceful decree. It was forged in agony and suppression.
That makes Uranus represent what? An attempt to control that.
Yes, Uranus represents a tyrannical attempt to control the uncontrollable. He thinks by burying the ugly, powerful parts of creation, he can maintain his perfect, domed sky.
He prefers a superficial perfection over acknowledging the raw, chaotic reality of nature.
Precisely.
But Gaia isn't going to just sit there and suffer. I mean, the pressure builds.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah. So she fashions a weapon out of her own flesh, minerals of the earth, a massive, jagged flint sickle.
Just a brutal, primitive weapon.
Right. And she gathers her Titan sons and basically asks, who is going to help me stop him? And they were all terrified of their dad.
Naturally.
They refuse. Except for the youngest, Cronus. The text calls him shrewd, calculating. He takes the sickle.
He bides his time.
He waits for his father, the sky, to descend on his mother, the earth, under the cover of night. And with this flint sickle, he castrates Uranus.
It is the ultimate act of usurpation.
He severs his father's power completely and throws the remains into the churning sea.
Which violently separates the sky from the earth, creating the space in which life can actually exist.
And the fallout from that act is wild. The text gives us this insane detail. The blood from the castration hits the earth and creates the Furies.
Right, those terrifying, shrieking entities whose sole purpose is to punish kinslayers.
But the severed flesh hits the sea, churning it into a white foam. And stepping out of that violent, bloody foam is Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, and sexuality.
It's quite an entrance.
That contrast just blew my mind. Love and absolute mutilation occurring in the exact same breath.
Well, that juxtaposition encapsulates the fundamental Greek worldview perfectly.
Really? How?
Love and beauty, Aphrodite, are born directly from unspeakable violence and generational trauma. The two are inextricably linked.
So there's no, pure, innocent beauty.
Exactly. There is no immaculate conception of beauty in this universe. It requires the severing of the old order. The Greeks understood that passion and beauty are terrifying forces, intimately connected to destruction.
Wow. Okay, so Uranus is overthrown. But before his consciousness fully fades away, he curses Cronus.
Right.
He tells him, your children are going to do the exact same thing to you.
A self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Reading this, the analogy that immediately jumped out at me is that this early cosmos operates exactly like a paranoid mob family.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Or maybe a ruthless dynastic corporate takeover. The current CEO creates the exact rebellion they are trying to prevent through their own tyrannical attempts to hold on to power.
It's the cycle of abuse, elevated to a cosmic scale.
Cronus takes over, marries his sister Rhea, and ushers in what the text calls the Golden Age.
Yeah.
But it's a hollow title, isn't it? Because he is absolutely terrified of that curse.
It is entirely hollow. Cronus cannot enjoy his absolute power because his psyche is consumed by the fear of losing it.
Power is never secure.
In this worldview, power is never secure. Violence begets violence. The overthrow of Uranus established a precedent: the strong replace the old.
So how does a paranoid, all-powerful king govern when he knows a prophecy is hanging over his head?
By trying to consume his own future.
And he does it literally. Every single time his wife Rhea has a baby Fifi. First Hestia, then Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Cronus takes the newborn infant and swallows it whole.
Just horrifying.
He traps them in his own belly. 5 times she gives birth. 5 times he eats the kid. He becomes the prison for his own bloodline.
He literally internalizes his anxiety.
Yeah. But the 6th time, Rhea reaches her breaking point. She tricks him.
The famous stone.
Right, she wraps a large, smooth rock in swaddling clothes. And Cronus is so blinded by panic and routine that he just swallows the rock without even checking.
Which tells you how mindless his paranoia has become.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Rhea hides the real baby, Zeus, in a dark cave on Mount Ida in Crete.
And the sensory details of Zeus's survival in that cave are deeply symbolic of a shift in how power is cultivated.
What do you mean?
Well, he isn't raised in a palace. He is nursed by Amalthea, a divine goat.
Right, he's basically feral.
Exactly. And to prevent Cronus from hearing the baby crying, Rhea places the Curetes outside the cave.
Oh, the guys with the shields.
Yes. These are heavily armed warriors who clash their bronze spears against their shields, creating a deafening cacophony to drown out the sounds of the infant.
That's intense.
Zeus is raised in the wild, deeply connected to the earth, absorbing the secret knowledge of the mountains. He represents a new kind of power. He isn't just a manifestation of raw force like his father or grandfather.
Right, because when he is fully grown and ready to confront his father, he doesn't just walk up and punch him. He uses cunning.
Strategy.
Guided by Metis, the tightness of wisdom, Zeus disguises himself as a cupbearer and slips Cronus a powerful emetic potion.
A potion to make him throw up?
Yeah, it makes Cronus violently vomit up the 5 siblings he swallowed along with the stone.
And because they are immortal, they've been growing inside him this whole time.
Which is just a crazy image. They emerge as fully grown, incredibly powerful gods. And this kicks off the Titanomachy.
The Titanomachy is not just a skirmish. It is a decade-long apocalyptic war between the old guard, the Titans entrenched on Mount Othrys, and the new guard, the Olympians on Mount Olympus.
And the sources paint a terrifying picture of this war. The sky is dark with smoke for 10 years. The oceans are boiling.
It's absolute cosmic devastation.
The earth is physically splitting apart from the sheer force of these immortal beings clashing. And for a decade, it is a dead heat. A complete stalemate.
Brute strength meeting brute strength.
Right. Zeus realizes they cannot win with brute strength alone. So he does something incredibly calculated. He goes down into the pitch-black depths of Tartarus and frees the very monsters that both his father and grandfather were utterly terrified of.
The Cyclops and the Hecaton chairs.
Yeah.
And this is the crucial turning point. It reveals why Zeus is the one who ultimately breaks the cycle.
Because he's willing to use them.
He succeeds where Uranus and Cronus failed, because he recognizes the tactical value of the marginalized, chaotic elements of the world. He doesn't try to suppress them, he recruits them.
And they pay him back in spades. The Cyclops, who are master smiths, forge weapons for the 3 brothers. They give Zeus his iconic thunderbolt.
A weapon of absolute celestial devastation.
They give Poseidon the trident, which can shatter the earth and summon tidal waves.
Yeah.
And they give Hades the helm of darkness, granting him perfect invisibility.
Unbeatable tools.
And the Hecaton cares. Those 100-armed giants. They just start hurling entire mountains at the Titans in a relentless barrage.
Zeus weaponizes the suppressed trauma of his family line. He unleashes the buried past to shatter the present.
Wow, that's a powerful way to put it. The Titans are overwhelmed, defeated, and cast down into Tartarus, guarded by the very monsters they once despised.
Exactly. Zeus establishes a new order, but it's vital to note that this order is built entirely on the tactical, calculated use of monstrous force.
It isn't a peaceful transition.
Not at all.
So, Zeus has overthrown his father, just as his father overthrew his grandfather. If I'm looking at this pattern, the obvious next step is that Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, who are all heavily armed now, flush with victory, are going to turn on each other.
That would be the expected historical pattern.
Right. How does Zeus prevent the cycle from continuing with his own powerful brothers? Because they could easily start another 10-year war for the ultimate throne.
But he doesn't fight them. And he doesn't try to swallow them.
He introduces a system, right, a bureaucratic mechanism to diffuse the tension. Instead of fighting for absolute centralized dominance, the 3 brothers cast lots.
They throw the dice to divide the cosmos.
It's an incredibly pragmatic solution to prevent another cosmic war. They leave it to chance. Zeus draws the sky. becoming the High King. Poseidon takes the churning, unpredictable sea. And Hades gets the underworld, the realm of the dead beneath the earth.
While the Earth itself is left as a shared domain where their influences overlap, this establishes what we could call the Olympian Syndicate.
The Olympian Syndicate, I love that.
It's a division of labor, a balance of power. It marks the transition from the chaotic, monolithic rule of the Titans to a more complex, structured, and inherently political universe.
And this new court on Mount Olympus is a fascinating place. The text describes Olympus as a peak piercing a veil too high for mortal breath, completely free of snow, rain, or decay.
It's a pristine, shining fortress.
But the gods themselves, they are incredibly messy. They are flawed, radiant, and intensely human in their neuroses.
Oh, they're spectacularly dysfunctional.
You have Hera, Zeus's wife, consumed by an intense, ongoing jealousy because Zeus cannot stop having affairs.
Right.
You have Athena, the goddess of tactical war, bursting fully formed and wearing armor out of Zeus's skull because, in a moment of inherited paranoia, Zeus actually swallowed her mother, Metis.
He couldn't fully shake the family curse.
Obviously not. You have Hephaestus, the lame, rejected god of the forge, building mechanical miracles because he was thrown off a mountain for being ugly. You have Hermes, the trickster, sneaking out of his crib on the very first day he's born to steal Apollo's sacred cattle.
Just absolute chaos from day one.
And Apollo and Artemis, the beautiful, terrifying twins who can bring healing light, or shoot arrows that unleash devastating plagues.
The modern instinct is to look at a pantheon of gods and expect to find moral compasses.
Yeah, we want them to be good.
Exactly. But if you look at the Olympians expecting saints, role models, or arbiters of justice, you will be deeply confused.
They aren't role models.
They are power personified. They are elevated reflections of human flaws, jealousy, pride, lust, anger, pettiness, but equipped with absolute unchecked power.
Which is terrifying.
They represent the world as it actually behaves unpredictable, weather-driven, and often profoundly unfair rather than how we might wish it to be.
Which brings us down from the pristine heights of Olympus to the mud of the earth. Because while the gods are setting up their marble mansions and bickering over celestial politics, mankind enters the picture.
And this is a pivotal shift.
And the story of Prometheus here is just incredible. Prometheus is a Titan, but he sided with Zeus during the war. His name literally translates to forethought.
He's the planner.
He shapes early man out of clay and water. But compared to the gods, or even the animals, we are pathetic.
Truly.
We are weak, we're born naked, we're shivering in the cold, we don't have fangs or thick fur or claws. And Zeus looks down at this shivering, miserable creation and says, "Good, keep him like that."
He explicitly refuses to help humanity.
He prefers they stay helpless.
Well, Zeus recognizes a fundamental political truth. Absolute independence is a threat to absolute authority. A helpless, shivering humanity is an obedient, groveling humanity. If they rely on the gods for every scrap of survival, they will never look up and challenge the sky.
But Prometheus, who straddles the line between the old Titan world and the new Olympian order, feels an intense pity for his mud creations. He decides to defy the High King.
He takes a massive risk.
He sneaks onto Olympus, goes to the forge of Ephesus, steals a spark of divine fire, hides it inside a hollow fennel stalk so it stays lit, and brings it down to humanity.
The theft of fire.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we usually hear this story as a cozy little fable. Oh, he gave them fire so they could cook their meat and not freeze to death in winter.
Right, a very sanitized version.
But looking at the source text, it's so much more than that. Fire is the literal birth of technology. It's the forge, it's metalworking, it's the ability to clear forests, to create language around the hearth, to push back the terrifying darkness.
It changes everything.
Did Zeus overreact because he was just a petty tyrant? Or did he genuinely fear that fire, meaning technology, might eventually allow these mudmen to challenge the gods themselves?
It is entirely the latter. Fire is the catalyst for civilization. It is the spark of autonomy.
Right.
With fire, mortals don't just survive. They invent, they build, they organize into cities. They stop being animals hiding in caves and start becoming a species capable of altering their environment.
And Zeus hates that.
Zeus's punishment for this theft is brutally disproportionate, which reveals the absolute depth of his terror.
The punishment is legendary. He has Prometheus chained with unbreakable bonds to a jagged peak in the Caucasus Mountains. And every single day, a massive eagle, Zeus's sacred bird, swoops down and rips out Prometheus's liver, eating it while he is still alive.
Visceral horror again.
And because Prometheus is immortal, his liver regenerates every night in the freezing cold. So the torture begins again the next morning. Forever.
It is a punishment specifically designed to break the spirit of foresight itself.
Wow.
It is eternal, agonizing stasis inflicted upon the very being who tried to move time forward for humanity.
But Zeus doesn't stop there. He has to punish the recipients of the stolen goods. He punishes mankind.
The collateral damage.
He commissions Hephaestus to craft a new being out of earth and water. The gods all pitch in to give her gifts. Aphrodite gives her devastating beauty. Athena teaches her crafts. Hermes gives her a deceitful heart and a silver tongue.
She is Pandora.
The all-gifted. And she is given a sealed jar, often mistranslated in pop culture as a box, which she is explicitly told never to open.
The ultimate test of temptation.
She is sent down to Prometheus' brother, Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought. He takes her in, and eventually, Pandora's curiosity overwhelms her. She cracks the seal on the jar.
And the contents of that jar represent the end of humanity's brief, ignorant bliss.
Out of the jar flies disease, back-breaking toil, grief, madness, starvation, and death. They swarm out into the world like a black cloud, infecting humanity forever.
Just devastating.
She manages to slam the lid shut, but it's too late. The only thing left trapped inside, pressed against the rim, is hope. It completely shatters the peaceful, simple existence early man had.
The story of Pandora introduces a devastating philosophical concept. Human suffering is the direct result of divine retribution for human progress.
We paid for fire with pain.
Exactly. We traded peace for technology, and the cost was mortality and pain. This segues perfectly into a concept outlined in the text by the ancient poet Hesiod, the 5 Ages of Man.
Yeah. This framework highlights a profound difference between the ancient worldview and our own modern perspective. Let's walk through those ages because it really sets the stage for the rest of the myths.
Please do.
The source breaks them down sequentially. First was a golden age, back under the rule of Cronus, where people lived in perfect peace, didn't have to farm, and just drifted off to sleep when they died.
Sounds idyllic.
Then the silver age, where people lived as pampered children for 100 years, became arrogant, refused to worship the gods, and Zeus wiped them out.
A quick decline.
Then the Bronze Age, these terrifying, violent men, supposedly born from ash trees who did nothing but fight and ended up destroying each other.
Just pure aggression.
Then comes the Heroic Age, which is a weird, brief interruption in the pattern, a time of demigods and epic quests.
A little blip of glory.
And finally, the Iron Age, the current age. The age Hesiod lived in, and the age we supposedly live in. The text describes it as an era of unending sorrow, broken bonds, heavy labor, where lies are common, oaths mean nothing, and children disrespect their parents.
The psychological framing here is crucial. The modern listener, generally speaking, is conditioned to believe in a trajectory of progress.
Right, that things get better.
Exactly. We believe that through science and social reform, tomorrow will be technologically and morally superior to yesterday.
Yeah.
But the ancient Greeks possessed a profound, systemic cultural pessimism. They believed civilization was in a state of slow, tragic, irreversible decay from a long-lost era of perfection.
So they thought they were the bottom of the barrel.
In their minds, we are the dregs. We are the exhausted survivors living in the ruins of greater men, slowly waiting for Zeus to wipe us out too.
That Iron Age reality leaves humanity feeling completely abandoned, grinding away in the dirt. But right before it, there was that brief, brilliant flicker of light that interrupted the decline. That heroic age.
A time when divine blood actually mingled with mortal struggle.
The era of the demigods. This was a brief, dazzling interlude in the slow decay of the world. But we must be careful not to project modern definitions onto them, right?
Right. To be a hero in the Greek sense did not mean being a savior or a saint.
Let's dive into the burden of divine blood. The hero in Greek myth is almost always born of a divine father, usually Zeus or Poseidon, and a mortal womb.
Yes.
And thinking about these figures as I read through their stories, the analogy that kept coming to mind was comparing them to modern child stars or superstar athletes.
Oh, that's an interesting parallel.
These individuals who are blessed with incredible otherworldly talent, who can perform feats no normal human can even comprehend. But precisely because of that immense unnatural gift, they are saddled with chaotic, deeply tragic, often thoroughly miserable personal lives.
They burn out.
They are completely isolated by their own greatness. They belong neither to the world of normal people nor to the distant world of the gods.
That is a very poignant way to frame it. They are thrust onto a stage they didn't ask to be on, burdened with cosmic expectations they can barely carry, and constantly targeted by the petty jealousies of both gods and paranoid mortal kings.
Their power makes them targets. Let's start with Perseus. The text basically calls him the foundational blueprint for the hero.
The archetype.
His story starts before he was even born, with a prophecy given to his grandfather, King Acrisius, stating that his daughter's son will one day kill him.
Another paranoid king.
Always. Terrified, Acrisius locks his daughter Danae in a windowless bronze tower. But Zeus wants her, so he sneaks in through the roof as a shower of golden rain. Perseus is conceived.
The gods always find a way.
Acrisius finds out, but he's too afraid of the Furies to murder them directly, so he locks the mother and baby in a wooden chest and throws them into the churning sea to drown.
Which is a terrible loophole to try and exploit.
Right. They miraculously wash up on an island, but years later, an evil king named Polydectes wants to force Danae to marry him. To protect his mother, Perseus rashly boasts that he can get the king any wedding gift he wants, even the head of Medusa the Gorgon.
Notice the underlying mechanics of Perseus's journey here. He is continually forced into action not by a grand desire to save the world, but by the fear and lust of toxic kings.
He's just trying to protect his mom.
Exactly. He is a pawn in a much larger game of political and divine chess. However, because he is favored, he is given divine tools to survive it.
Athena gives him a highly polished mirrored shield, Hermes provides a curved adamantine sword, and he acquires the winged sandals and Hades' helm of absolute invisibility.
Quite the arsenal.
And he uses those tools brilliantly. He flies to the edge of the world. He uses the mirrored shield to walk backward toward Medusa, looking only at her reflection so he isn't turned to stone by her gaze.
Very tactical.
He severs her head, which insanely births the winged horse Pegasus from her severed neck.
Yeah.
Another example of beauty from violence.
Just like Aphrodite.
Yes.
Ah.
He puts the head in a magic bag, flies back home, pulls it out in the throne room, and turns King Polydectes and all his corrupt followers to solid stone.
Problem solved.
He saves his mother, he saves the day. It looks like a clean, triumphant victory.
But
then, years later, he is visiting a neighboring kingdom. He is competing in some friendly funeral games. He throws a heavy bronze discus. The wind catches it, it veers off course, flies into the crowd, and strikes an old man in the head, killing him instantly.
And that old man.
It was Acrisius, his grandfather. The prophecy from decades ago is fulfilled completely by accident.
The brutal irony there is absolutely intentional. Perseus did everything right. He acquired the divine weapons, he slew the monster, he saved the damsel.
Yeah.
But even armed with the gifts of the gods, Perseus cannot outmaneuver fate. He is ultimately an instrument of a predetermined script. The wind taking the discus is the universe correcting the timeline.
Wow. But while Perseus is the blueprint, Heracles is the absolute apex of endurance in this mythology.
Endurance is the key word for Heracles.
Heracles is just pure, unadulterated suffering. He's sired by Zeus, which instantly makes Hera, Zeus's wife, despise him with a burning passion.
He's relentless.
She sends 2 massive venomous serpents into his crib when he's just an infant, and he strangles them both with his bare hands while giggling.
A hint of what's to come.
He grows up, gets married to a woman named Megara, and has children. He is happy, and then Hera strikes for the shadows. She infects his mind with a terrifying, divine madness, blinding him to reality.
Oh, it's tragic.
In a fit of rage, hallucinating that his family are his enemies, he slaughters his own wife and children. When the madness lifts and he realizes the absolute horror of what he's done, he seeks purification.
To atone for this horrific crime.
The oracle tells him he must serve a cowardly, lesser king named Eurystheus and complete 10, which later becomes 12 impossible labors.
And the labors of Heracles are fundamentally different from Perseus's quest. They are not simply physical feats of strength.
What are they then?
They are encounters with the impossible, with the chaotic remnants of the old world, and ultimately with death itself. He is sent to clean up the darkest corners of the earth.
The sources detail the sheer agonizing mechanics of some of these labors. He has to hunt the Nemean lion, a beast whose golden fur is completely impenetrable to mortal weapons. Arrows just bounce off it.
So what does he do?
He corners it in a cave and literally strangles it to death with his bare hands, then uses the lion's own razor-sharp claws to skin it, wearing the pelt as armor.
Resourceful and brutal.
Then he fights the Lernaean Hydra, a massive serpent where if you chop off one head, 2 more instantly grow back. It's a nightmare of exponential multiplication.
A literal unwinnable fight.
He only wins because his nephew, Iolaus, runs around with a burning torch, cauterizing the bloody neck stumps the second Heracles decapitates them.
Again, using fire to overcome nature.
Right. He has to clean the Augean stables, which held thousands of immortal cattle and hadn't been mucked out in 30 years. The stench and disease are unimaginable.
Impossible task.
He doesn't shovel it. He uses his massive strength to physically tear through the earth and reroute 2 entire rivers to wash the filth away in a massive flood.
He's literally terraforming.
And his final labor requires him to descend into the pitch-black underworld, confront Hades, physically wrestle Cerberus, the massive 3-headed demon dog, into submission without using weapons and drag it up into the sunlight.
He conquers death itself.
He does it all. He survives. But how does this invincible man die? Years later, his new wife is tricked by a dying centaur into smearing Heracles' tunic with the centaur's poisoned blood, thinking it's a love potion.
A tragic misunderstanding.
When Heracles puts it on, the poison, which is actually the venom of the Hydra he killed years ago, burns his flesh so deeply, so agonizingly, that he cannot tear the tunic off without ripping his own skin to the bone.
It's a horrific way to go.
He begs his friends to build a massive wooden pyre and burn him alive just to stop the pain. He eventually achieves apotheosis. He burns away his mortal half and becomes a god on Olympus. But the cost is unimaginable physical and psychological torment.
You outlined his agony perfectly, and it demands we ask, why do the stories of the greatest heroes always end in such profound misery?
Right. Why?
Because Greek heroism, as embodied by Heracles, isn't about moral purity. It certainly isn't about achieving a cozy, happily ever after.
Definitely not.
It is about the capacity to suffer gracefully and continuously. Heracles symbolizes physical resilience and the long, brutal, lonely road of atonement. He absorbs the punishment of the gods, and he endures. That endurance is his true superpower, not his muscles.
And you transition to someone like Theseus. He's a completely different archetype. He's the politician, the builder of cities.
Yes, the statesman hero.
He is the son of Poseidon, or possibly the mortal King Aegis of Athens. As a young man, he decides to take the dangerous, monster-infested coastal road to Athens to claim his birthright.
He wants to make a name for himself.
He cleans up the highway by defeating serial killers who act as twisted reflections of hospitality. He kills Procrustes, who would invite travelers in, offer them an iron bed, and then either stretch them on a rack if they were too short or chop off their legs if they were too tall to make them fit perfectly.
Procrustes is a terrifying figure.
Theseus gives him a taste of his own medicine. Theseus gets to Athens, unites the region, and finds out about a horrific tax. Athens has to send 7 young men and 7 young women to the island of Crete every 9 years to be thrown into a massive maze and eaten by the Minotaur, a half-man, half-bull monstrosity.
A brutal political subjugation.
Theseus volunteers as tribute. He goes into the pitch-black labyrinth. But he only survives because the princess of Crete, Ariadne, falls in love with him and gives him a ball of thread to unspool so he can find his way back out in the dark.
He needed her help.
He beats the Minotaur to death, follows the threat out, takes Ariadne, and sails away. A huge victory, right?
Seems like it.
But then he stops at an island and just abandons Ariadne on the beach while she's sleeping. He sails away without her.
Cold-blooded.
And because he is so distracted or arrogant, he forgets the one promise he made to his father, to change his ship's sails from black to white if he survived. His father, King Aegeus, is standing on a cliff in Athens. He sees the black sails on the horizon, assumes his son was torn apart by the Minotaur, and in a fit of absolute grief, throws himself off the cliff into the sea, which is why it's called the Aegean Sea today.
Theseus embodies the power and the ultimate flaw of the polis, the city-state.
Yeah.
He is a unifier of people, a creator of laws, and a slayer of chaos. But his personal life is an unmitigated disaster, fueled by his own political ambition, his forgetfulness, and his hubris.
He builds the state, but he destroys the people closest to him in the process.
Exactly.
And we're talking about destroying the people close to you. We have to talk about Jason.
Oh, Jason.
The ambitious one. He isn't the strongest, he isn't the best fighter, but he is incredibly charismatic. He is groomed for vengeance to take back his rightful throne from his usurping uncle Peleus.
He's a leader of men.
He gathers all the greatest heroes of the age. The Argonauts gets a magical ship called the Argo that has a piece of a prophetic oak tree built into its prow and sails to the edge of the world for the Golden Fleece.
An epic voyage.
But when he gets to Colchis, the tasks the king sets for him are literally impossible. Fire-breathing bulls, armies grown from dragon teeth. Jason only succeeds because Hera intervenes and makes Medea, the king's daughter, and a terrifyingly powerful priestess of Hecate fall obsessively, magically in love with him.
And Medea is not someone to cross.
And Medea's magical aid is not sparkly wand magic. It is horrific.
Very dark magic.
To help Jason steal the fleece and escape her father's fleet, Medea murders her own brother, chops his body into pieces, and throws the bloody limbs into the sea behind their ship, knowing her father will have to stop and collect the pieces for a proper burial.
A chilling delay tactic.
Later, to clear Jason's path to the throne back home, she tricks King Peleus' daughters into thinking they can rejuvenate his youth by chopping him up and boiling him with magic herbs.
She's ruthless.
She lets them murder their own father. She burns her entire world to the ground for Jason. And how does Jason reward this intense, terrifying loyalty?
Very poorly.
Years later, feeling she is too much of a political liability, he abandons her to marry a younger, more politically advantageous princess.
A terrible mistake.
Medea's retaliation is nuclear. She gives the new bride a poisoned dress that bursts into unquenchable flames, burning the princess and the king to ash.
Total destruction.
And then, to inflict the maximum possible agony on Jason, she murders her own children, the children she had with Jason, so he has no legacy, no bloodline, nothing. She escapes on a chariot pulled by dragons.
Leaving him with absolutely nothing.
And Jason, the golden boy, the captain of the Argo, he wanders the earth as a broken, exiled, forgotten old man. He sits under the rotting hull of his old ship, the Argo, weeping until a decaying wooden beam snaps, falls on his head, and kills him alone in the dirt.
A pathetic end.
I have to admit, reading that, I felt a genuine sense of despair. If these are the heroes, what is the point of striving? Jason dies under a piece of rotting wood. Where is the glory in that?
Well, the stark reality of Jason's death is exactly the point.
It is.
It reveals the ultimate Greek truth. No one, absolutely no one, not even a hero who sails to the edge of the known earth, speaks with gods, or manipulates magic, escapes their mortal limits.
Right.
These tragic ends are not accidents. They reinforce the strict, unbreachable boundary between the human and the divine. The gods are eternal, static, and untouchable. Humans, even the absolute greatest of them, are finite.
They burn out.
Their greatness is defined precisely by the fact that it burns incredibly bright and then inevitably, tragically extinguishes.
So if demigods armed with magical shields, superhuman strength, and prophetic ships cannot escape their tragic, often pathetic ends, what hope does a purely mortal king have when the universe decides his path is already written?
Very little hope at all.
It's wild that even with all that power, you can outrun monsters, but you cannot outrun the script. Which brings us to the most terrifying foundational force in this entire mythos. Fate.
The concept of fate, or Moira.
Right.
If you want to understand the engine that drives Greek tragedy, you have to understand fate. It is the underlying mechanism that dictates the motion of the entire cosmos.
The text describes fate as an unseen, inescapable gravity. It is personified by three ancient sisters, Clotho, who spins the thread of life on her spindle, Lachesis, who measures the length of that thread, determining how long you get to live, and Atropos, the inflexible one, who holds the shears and cuts the thread when your time is up.
The three fates.
And the mind-blowing detail here, the thing that completely recontextualizes the hierarchy of power, is that even Zeus, the High King, the god who throws lightning bolts and overthrew the Titans, even he cannot stop Atropos from snipping that thread.
He is powerless against them.
When he watches his mortal sons die in battle, he weeps tears of blood, but he cannot intervene. He is bound by the thread too.
Because fate isn't a god in the traditional sense. It isn't a personality you can bribe with burnt offerings.
Right, you can't sacrifice a bull to change it.
Exactly. You cannot seduce it, you cannot intimidate it, and you certainly cannot fight it with a bronze sword. It is the fundamental algorithm of the cosmos.
An algorithm?
It is the cold math of inevitability.
Yes, it's exactly like a ruthless algorithm that you cannot outsmart.
Yeah.
And the cruelest part of this algorithm is that every single action you take to aggressively dodge the fate you were warned about is actually the exact step needed to fulfill it.
It's the ultimate trap.
Let's look at the foundation of the city of Thebes, because it sets off a generational curse that perfectly illustrates this.
Thebes is a classic example.
It starts with a prince named Cadmus, who goes to the oracle at Delphi looking for his kidnapped sister. The oracle ignores his question and tells him to follow a specific cow until it lies down from exhaustion and build a city right on that spot.
A very strange directive.
He does. But the nearby spring is guarded by a massive water dragon, sacred to Ares, the god of war. Cadmus slays the serpent. Following divine advice, he takes the dragon's teeth and sows them into the soil like seeds.
Sowing dragon's teeth.
Instantly, a crop of fully armed, terrifying warriors springs from the earth, the Spartoi, the sown men. Cadmus throws a rock among them, they turn on each other in confusion and fight to the death until only 5 remain.
And those 5 become the founders.
Yes, the noble founding families of Thebes. To apologize to Ares for killing his pet, Cadmus serves him for 8 years and is rewarded with marriage to Harmonia, the daughter of Ares and Aphrodite. It's a glittering divine wedding.
But there's a catch.
At the wedding, they receive a gift, a stunningly beautiful necklace crafted by Hephaestus. But because Hephaestus hates Aphrodite for cheating on him with Ares, the necklace is cursed. It brings ruin to whoever wears it.
A poisoned gift.
This one beautiful curse object, combined with the blood of the dragon, begins a generational cascade of absolute horror for the royal house of Thebes.
The House of Thebes operates as the ultimate case study in the inescapable web of fate. The curse lingers in the bloodline, lying dormant for a generation, only to erupt again.
Yeah.
And nowhere in all of literature is the mechanics of that curse clearer or more psychologically devastating than in the tragedy of Oedipus.
The story of Oedipus is a masterclass in horrific, suffocating irony. King Laius and Queen Jocasta of Thebes, descendants of Cadmus, go to the oracle and receive a prophecy that shatters them. Their newborn baby boy will grow up to murder his father and marry his mother.
The worst possible news.
So they do what any terrified monarchs desperate to dodge an algorithm would do. They pierce the baby's ankles, pin them together with an iron rod, and order a servant to abandon the infant on the wild slopes of Mount Cithaeron to die of exposure.
Trying to rewrite fate.
But the servant is human. He takes pity on the crying baby. Instead of leaving him to the wolves, he hands the baby off to a shepherd from the neighboring kingdom of Corinth.
A single act of mercy seals their doom.
The shepherd takes the baby to the childless king and queen of Corinth, who adopt him as their own. They name him Oedipus, which literally translates to swollen foot, because of the scars from the iron pen. He grows up as a prince, completely, blissfully unaware that he is adopted.
He is a prince of Corinth. He is happy until one night at a banquet, a drunken guest shouts out that Oedipus is a bastard, not true blood.
Just a random drunk guy ruins everything.
The seed of doubt is planted. So Oedipus goes to the absolute source of truth in the ancient world, the oracle at Delphi.
Right.
He asks her directly about his parentage. And the oracle doesn't answer his question. She simply screams the same horrifying prophecy at him. You will kill your father and defile your mother's bed.
So Oedipus, who is depicted as a deeply noble, moral, proactive guy at this point, says, I love my parents in Corinth. I can't go back and risk hurting them. He immediately flees in the exact opposite direction to protect the people he thinks are his parents.
He runs away from Corinth.
But on the dusty road away from Delphi, at a narrow place where 3 roads meet, he encounters a chariot driven by an arrogant older man who demands the right of way.
Good crossroads.
The old man strikes Oedipus on the head with a goad to force him off the road. Oedipus, full of youthful pride and rage, strikes back. He drags the old man from the chariot and kills him, along with his guards.
An act of road rage.
He dusts himself off and keeps walking. He doesn't know it, but he just slaughtered King Laius of Thebes, his biological father.
The man who tried to expose him as an infant.
Step 1 of the prophecy, complete.
But observe the psychology of the moment here. He continues down the road, his conscience relatively clear for a warrior of his time, fully believing he is successfully running away from his terrible fate.
He thinks he's safe.
He has no idea that the road he chose to flee is the fate itself.
He arrives at the gates of Thebes. But the city is under siege, not by an army, but by the Sphinx, a monster with the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the face of a woman. She sits on a rock outside the city, intercepting travelers and asking them a riddle.
If they get it wrong, she strangles and devours them.
She has eaten dozens of young men. Oedipus approaches her. She asks her famous riddle, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening?
A classic riddle.
Oedipus doesn't flinch. He answers correctly. Man. A human crawls on all 4s as a baby in the morning of life, walks tall on 2 legs in adulthood, and leans on a cane in the twilight of old age.
He solves it.
Defeated, the Sphinx throws herself off the cliff and dies. The city of Thebes is liberated, and the grateful, cheering citizens offer their brilliant new savior the vacant throne and the hand of their recently widowed queen, Jocasta, the woman who birthed him.
A horrific reward.
He accepts. Step 2, complete.
He ascends to the throne. He rules benevolently for years. He and Jocasta have 4 children together. To all outside appearances, he's the most successful, blessed man in the Greek world.
Yeah, he seems like he has it all figured out.
He's solved the riddle of humanity. But the brutal irony is that while he understood the abstract nature of man, he was completely, catastrophically blind to his own identity. And the universe cannot let that unnatural union stand. A plague descends upon the city. Crops rot in the fields, women die in childbirth, the city smells of death.
The priests go to Delphi, and the oracle says the plague will only lift when the murderer of the old King Laius is finally found and driven from the city. So Oedipus, being a responsible, dedicated king, vows to hunt the killer down.
He becomes the detective.
He relentlessly investigates. He acts as the lead detective trying to solve a cold case that is literally destroying his city. He questions witnesses. He presses the blind prophet Tiresias to speak.
And Tiresias knows the truth.
And Tiresias, who can see the truth clearly despite having no eyes, begs Oedipus to stop investigating. But Oedipus pushes.
He won't let it go.
Finally, Tiresias breaks and tells him, "You are the curse. You are the polluter of this land. You are the murderer." Oedipus refuses to believe it, but slowly, painfully, the testimonies pile up. The scarred ankles, the location of the murder at the crossroads,
The evidence mounts.
the survivor's description of the killer. Finally, the shepherd who handed him over as a baby is brought forward. Oedipus interrogates him, threatening torture until the man speaks. And then, the final puzzle piece snaps into place. The horrific truth clicks.
The psychological weight of this realization is unparalleled in Western literature.
It really is.
But I want to address something you hinted at earlier when we discussed the inescapable nature of this algorithm. The obvious question a modern listener asks is, if the fates control everything and the script is already written and locked in, why do these characters bother fighting?
Right.
If I know the thread is going to be cut no matter what, why not just lay down and give up?
Honestly, if I'm Oedipus and I get that first prophecy at Delphi, I don't investigate anything. I don't go near a major city. I bury my head in the sand. I find a quiet cave and live as a hermit.
Just opt out entirely.
Yes. I don't understand the psychological drive it takes to keep pushing Tiresias for the truth. When you feel the walls closing in, when you know the answer is going to obliterate your reality.
You say that, but the text frames it differently because the Greek conception of human dignity is different.
How so?
The Greeks didn't consult oracles to change the future. They didn't view fate as a multiple choice test. They consulted oracles to prepare the soul to face the inevitable future with dignity.
Oh, wow.
The tragedy of Oedipus is incredibly profound precisely because he does not stop. He is not destroyed by a sudden act of evil or malice or a base character flaw like greed.
Right. He's actually trying to do the right thing.
He is destroyed by his relentless, uncompromising, noble pursuit of the truth. He is the brilliant detective who turns the magnifying glass on himself and discovers he is the monster he's been hunting.
That is chilling.
Awareness, arriving just a moment too late, is the very essence of Greek tragedy. The climax isn't a sword fight, the climax is a realization.
And the physical fallout is awful. When Jocasta realizes the truth of who she has been sleeping with, she runs to her bedchamber and hangs herself.
She can't live with it.
When Oedipus realizes it, he breaks down the door, sees her body, takes the long golden brooches from her dress, and violently gouges his own eyes out.
Blinding himself to the truth he finally saw.
He blinds himself because he literally cannot bear to look at the world he has created, the parents he failed, or the children he has monstrously fathered.
It's the ultimate punishment.
And his children inherit the poison of that curse. His sons, Eteocles and Polynices, agree to share the throne, alternating years. But Eteocles refuses to step down, leading Polynices to bring a foreign army against his own city. The brothers meet on the battlefield and drive their spears through each other's chests simultaneously, dying in the dirt.
A mutual annihilation.
And his daughter, Antigone, defies the new king's edict to leave Polynices to rot for the vultures. She buries her brother out of divine duty, and for that, she's sealed alive in a cave.
The entire family tree is wiped out.
It's just a complete systemic annihilation, all because they tried to cleverly dodge an oracle. And you see this hubris punished everywhere in the sources.
Absolutely everywhere.
You see it with King Croesus of Lydia, centuries later, who asked the Oracle of Delphi if he should march his army across the river to go to war against the Persians.
Ah, the famous ambiguous prophecy.
Right. The Oracle gave him a classic, terrifyingly vague answer. If you cross the river, you will destroy a great empire.
A masterclass in misdirection.
Croesus assumes he's going to win. He crosses the river, he attacks, and his army is absolutely decimated. He destroyed a great empire, his own.
The oracle is a mirror. It never lies to you, but it never gives you the comfort of a straight answer. It reflects your own hubris, your own assumptions right back at you, allowing you to walk willingly into your own destruction.
And this inevitability of fate, it scales up. It doesn't just destroy single individuals or families like the House of Thebes. It has the power to pull the entire known world into a meat grinder.
A global catastrophe.
And sometimes the apocalypse doesn't start with a massive cosmic betrayal or a titanomachy. Sometimes it starts with something as petty, small, and profoundly human as a wedding invitation and a piece of fruit.
The Trojan War.
That brings us to the Trojan War.
The Trojan War is the absolute crescendo of the mythological timeline. It is the singularity where gods, heroes, and the inflexible thread of fate collide on an unprecedented scale.
It starts at a divine wedding. Peleus, a mortal king, is marrying Thetis, a sea goddess. Everyone is invited, except for Eris, the goddess of discord.
For obvious reasons.
Right, nobody wants the goddess of arguments at a wedding.
Okay.
Insulted, she crashes the party, walks up to the banquet table, and throws a solid golden apple into the crowd.
The apple of discord.
Inscribed on the apple are the words, "To the fairest." Instantly, Three goddesses lunge for it. Hera, the queen of the gods, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty.
A terrible contest.
They demand Zeus judge between them. Zeus, who is no fool when it comes to the wrath of these three, refuses to touch it.
Smart man.
He forces a mortal shepherd named Paris, who is secretly a prince of the wealthy city of Troy, to be the judge. The goddesses appear before him and immediately start offering bribes.
Because they can't just rely on their looks.
Hera offers him absolute political power over all of Asia and Europe. Athena offers him unbeatable wisdom and guaranteed victory in every war. But Aphrodite, she leans in and offers him the love of the most beautiful mortal woman in the world.
And Paris makes his choice.
Paris, thinking with his hormones rather than his brain, chooses Aphrodite. And that most beautiful woman in the world is Helen.
But consider the geopolitical reality of that choice for a second. Helen wasn't just beautiful. She was a political powder keg waiting for a spark.
Right, she was dangerous.
Her mortal father, King Tyndareus of Sparta, knew that every king and warlord in Greece wanted to marry her. He knew that the moment he chose one husband, the dozens of rejected suitors, heavily armed and full of pride, would start a civil war.
So what did he do?
On the sly advice of a young, clever king named Odysseus, Tyndareus made all the suitors swear a terrifying sacred blood oath over a dismembered horse, whoever Helen chooses to marry. Every single other king must swear to violently defend that marriage against any threat forever.
They all swear it. Helen chooses Menelaus, the wealthy king of Sparta. But then Paris, guided by Aphrodite, comes to Sparta on a diplomatic visit.
And chaos ensues.
Under the sacred protection of guest right, he eats at Menelaus' table, and then when Menelaus leaves town, Paris takes Helen, whether by force or by seduction, the texts vary, and sails back to the impenetrable walls of Troy.
He breaks the ultimate rule of hospitality.
Menelaus returns, finds his wife gone, and invokes the oath. And suddenly, instantaneously, every major king in Greece, Odysseus in Ithaca, the great warrior Achilles, the high king Agamemnon, Ajax the giant, is legally and spiritually bound to pull their ships onto the beach, gather their armies, and go to total war over one single woman.
The machinery of war grinds into motion.
But they hit a snag before they even leave Greece. The massive Greek armada gathers at the port of Aulis, 1,000 ships, tens of thousands of men, and the wind completely dies.
They're stranded.
The water is like glass. They're stuck on the beach for weeks, eating through their supplies, morale plummeting. A seer reveals that Agamemnon has deeply offended Artemis, and the goddess has stopped the winds.
And her price is steep.
The only way to get the winds moving again, the only way to appease the goddess, is for King Agamemnon to bring his own teenage daughter, Iphigenia, to the altar and slit her throat as a sacrifice.
It's an unthinkable choice.
And after a brief moment of hesitation, he does it. He lies to his wife, brings his daughter to camp under the guise of marrying her to Achilles, and murders his own child just to get the ships out of the harbor.
We cannot gloss over the horror of that moment. The sacrifice of Iphigenia represents the death of innocence and the immediate, irrevocable moral compromise of war.
Right.
Before a single Greek sword is swung at a Trojan soldier, before they even see the walls of Troy, the Greeks have already committed an unforgivable atrocity against their own blood. The war is cursed from the moment the blood hits the altar.
And this highlights the incredible, gritty, psychological realism of the Trojan War that I didn't expect.
How so?
I was reading this and thinking, it stops being about a golden apple or even Helen very quickly. The romantic justification evaporates. It becomes the ultimate sunk cost fallacy.
Oh, absolutely.
After 9 long, bloody, exhausting years camped on a disease-ridden beach outside the massive walls of Troy, the Greek kings simply cannot go home empty-handed.
They've sacrificed too much.
Agamemnon cannot sail back to his wife Clytemnestra and say, yeah, I sacrificed our beautiful daughter for absolutely nothing. The walls were too thick. We're giving up. They're entirely trapped by the weight of their own brutal investment in the conflict.
You've identified the exact psychological mechanism that keeps the war grinding on like a machine. And Homer's epic, the Iliad, brilliantly captures this.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell the story of the whole 10-year war. It focuses intensely on a few weeks in the 9th year. specifically on a petty dispute over war prizes that perfectly encapsulates this toxic, fragile pride holding the Greek army together.
Right. The Greeks raid a nearby temple and take two young women as captives, Briseis and Chryseis. Agamemnon takes one, Achilles takes the other. But Chryseis' father is a priest of Apollo, and he prays for a plague to strike the Greek camp until his daughter is returned.
The gods always take a side.
Dogs and men start dying in droves. Finally, Achilles calls an assembly and forces Agamemnon to give the girl back. Agamemnon, furious that his authority is being challenged publicly by a younger man, says, "Fine, I'll give her back. But to prove I am the High King, I'm taking your prize, Briseis, to replace her."
A massive public insult to Achilles' honor.
So Achilles, who is the greatest, fastest, most lethal warrior, the Greeks have a man whose mother is a goddess and who is explicitly fated to die young if he stays at Troy, just snaps.
He refuses to fight.
He says, "Fine, fight your own war." He withdraws his elite troops, the Myrmidons. He sits in his tent, plays his lyre, and listens while the Greeks go out and get absolutely slaughtered by the Trojans without him.
The entire Greek coalition is pushed to the brink of annihilation because of the wounded ego of one man.
One guy.
The domino effect is devastating. On the other side, you have Hector, the crown prince of Troy. Hector is a completely different kind of hero. He doesn't fight for personal glory. He fights in a sense of duty to his city, his wife Andromache, and his infant son.
He's much more relatable.
With Achilles out of the fight, Hector leads the Trojan charge, breaks through the Greek defenses, and pushes them all the way back to their ships, threatening to burn the fleet and trap the Greeks in Asia forever.
The panic in the Greek camp is palpable. Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, the person he loves most in the world, cannot stand sitting in the tent watching his friends die on the beach.
He has to act.
He begs Achilles, "If you won't fight, at least let me wear your famous armor and lead the Myrmidons out. The Trojans will think you've returned and they'll retreat."
A fatal mistake.
Achilles reluctantly agrees, but gives him a strict order. "Drive them away from the ships, but do not pursue them to the walls. Do not try to take the city."
But he doesn't listen.
In the heat of battle, feeling invincible in the armor of Achilles, Patroclus gets carried away. He pushes the Trojans all the way back to the gates. And there, the god Apollo strikes him, knocking off his helmet, and Hector drives a spear through his belly, killing him.
The turning point.
When the news reaches Achilles that Patroclus is dead, that Hector stripped his armor from the corpse, Achilles' grief is apocalyptic. It transcends anger.
He loses his mind.
He stops caring about his argument with Agamemnon. He stops caring about glory or going home or his own life. He wants nothing but absolute vengeance. His mother gets Hephaestus to forge him new glowing armor, and he wades into the battle.
He becomes a force of nature.
He goes on a godlike rampage. He slaughters so many Trojan soldiers in the river Scamander that the water literally chokes on the blood and corpses, and the river god himself rises up to fight Achilles.
The sheer scale of the violence is staggering.
And finally, the two armies pull back, and he confronts Hector alone outside the gates.
And this duel is the tragic, beating heart of the Iliad.
Tell me about it.
Hector sees Achilles coming, glowing like a star of ill omen. Hector runs, briefly overcome by sheer terror, but then stops, turns, and faces his fate. He knows he is outmatched, but he stands his ground for his city.
He accepts his death.
Achilles drives a spear through his neck. But merely killing him isn't enough to satiate the black hole of Achilles' grief.
Oh no.
As Hector dies, he begs Achilles to return his body to his parents for proper burial. Achilles looks down at him and says, "I wish my stomach would let me cut off your flesh and eat it raw."
That is dark.
He pierces the tendons in Hector's heels, threads oxhide leather through them, ties the corpse to the back of his war chariot, and whips the horses. He drags Hector's broken body through the dirt around the walls of Troy for days, defiling the corpse in full view of Hector's screaming parents on the battlements.
It's savage. It is a complete breakdown of human decency. And this madness only stops in one of the most powerful, heartbreaking scenes I've ever read.
Priam's visit.
Yes. King Priam, the old, frail, broken king of Troy, sneaks out of the city in the dead of night. Guided by Hermes, He gets past all the Greek sentries, enters Achilles' tent, falls to his knees, and literally kisses the hands of the man who murdered his son.
The ultimate act of supplication.
He begs for Hector's body. He tells Achilles, "I have endured what no mortal man has ever endured. I have brought my lips to the hands of the man who killed my children."
Just gut-wrenching.
He reminds Achilles of his own aging father back home. And for a moment, the rage breaks. Achilles looks at this old man, and they both weep. Achilles cries for his father and for Patroclus. Priam cries for Hector and for his doomed city.
It's beautiful.
They share a meal, this profound, fleeting moment of shared humanity in a sea of blood. The body is washed, returned, and Hector is buried.
But that moment of grace does not stop the gears of the war. The conflict demands a conclusion. Achilles himself dies shortly after, shot in his one vulnerable spot, his heel by a poisoned arrow fired by Paris, guided by Apollo.
The greatest warrior falls not in a glorious duel, but by a sniper's arrow.
Exactly. And the stalemate is finally broken not by valor or strength, but by pure deception.
The Trojan horse. It is Odysseus' absolute masterstroke of cunning. The Greeks pretend to give up. They burn their camp, board their ships, and sail just out of sight behind a nearby island.
Leaving the horse behind.
But they leave behind a massive, towering wooden horse on the beach, ostensibly as an offering to Athena for a safe journey home. They also leave behind one heavily beaten spy, Sinon, who spins a complex lie to the Trojans.
A dangerous gamble.
He tells them the Greeks hated him, he escaped, and the horse is a divine talisman. If the Trojans bring it inside their walls, Troy will be unconquerable forever. Some Trojans are suspicious.
Laocoon, for one.
Yes. A priest of Apollo, Laocoon, throws a spear into the wooden flank of the horse and screams, "I fear the Greeks, even those bearing gifts."
But the gods intervene.
Suddenly, two massive, terrifying sea serpents rise from the churning ocean, slither onto the beach, wrap themselves around Laocoon and his two young sons, and crush them to death, dragging them into the sea.
The ultimate bad omen.
The Trojans, desperate for the war to be over, take this terrifying event as a clear divine sign that Laocoon was punished for doubting the gift. They tear down a section of their own impregnable wall, drag the massive horse into the city, and throw a massive drunken celebration of victory.
They invite their own doom inside.
They fall asleep exhausted. But in the dead of night, a trapdoor in the belly of the horse opens. Odysseus and the elite Greek fighters slip out, silently kill the sentries, and open the main gates for the Greek army, which has sailed back under the cover of darkness. And the sack of Troy begins.
And it is absolutely vital to understand how the source texts portray the sack of Troy.
How so?
It is not framed as a glorious, heroic victory to be celebrated. It is presented as an unmitigated, sickening horror.
It's a massacre. They don't just win the war, they obliterate the city in the most profane ways possible.
Ritual devastation.
Neoptolemus, the young bloodthirsty son of Achilles, finds old King Priam seeking sanctuary at the altar of Zeus and slaughters him right on the sacred steps, his blood washing over the altar.
A massive sacrilege.
The lesser Ajax finds the prophetess Cassandra clinging to a statue of Athena in the temple, and he drags her away screaming, knocking the statue over.
The gods are watching all of this, by the way.
And perhaps the most horrifying detail, Odysseus realizes that if they leave Hector's infant son, Astyanax, alive, he will grow up to seek revenge. So they rip the baby from his mother's arms and hurl him off the towering walls of Troy to his death on the rocks below.
The brutal logic of ancient warfare.
The women are enslaved, the city is burned to ash, there is no honor left in it.
Exactly. This horrific night marks the bitter, definitive end of the heroic age. The Greeks win the war physically, but they completely lose their souls in the process. They commit atrocities that disgust even the gods who actively supported them.
It went too far.
When we look at this epic, we must frame the sack of Troy as a profound anti-war sentiment wrapped in the guise of an adventure. There are no victors at Troy. There are only traumatized survivors returning to broken homes, carrying a hollow legacy built on the corpses of children.
Which brings us to the aftermath, what the texts call the cursed returns. Because the gods are so disgusted by the desecration of temples, almost none of the Greek leaders get a peaceful homecoming.
They are punished for their sins at Troy.
Agamemnon, the High King, comes home victorious, his ships laden with Trojan gold. But his wife, Clytemnestra, has not forgotten for a single second that he slit their daughter's throat 10 years ago.
She has been waiting.
She welcomes him home, waits for him to step into a warm bath, throws a heavy net over him so he can't move, and hacks him to pieces with an axe.
A grisly end.
Odysseus, the architect of the horse, faces a grueling, terrifying 10-year nightmare just trying to sail back to his island of Ithaca. He's cursed by Poseidon. He loses his ships. He loses every single one of his men to horrors like the man-eating Cyclops, the witch Circe who turns his men into pigs, the flesh-tearing sirens and terrifying storms.
He loses everything.
He arrives home a decade later, alone, disguised as a beggar, to find his house overrun by arrogant suitors trying to marry his wife.
And then there's a niece.
Right. The only major Trojan royal to survive the slaughter is Aeneas, who escapes the burning city, carrying his elderly, crippled father on his back and holding his son's hand, sailing west across the Mediterranean to eventually lay the seeds for the civilization that will become Rome.
But regardless of whether they were murdered in the bath, died at sea, or lived to old age, those who survived the physical war eventually faced the final journey that every single Greek hero, coward, king, or slave must make.
The inevitable descent into the dark.
The underworld.
Let's talk about that dark. The underworld. It's ruled by Hades, who is sometimes called Pluto, meaning the wealthy one, because every precious gem, every vein of gold, and every seed that grows comes from beneath the earth.
A god of wealth as well as death.
When I read the detailed descriptions of the afterlife in the source text, I couldn't help but joke that the Greek underworld sounds significantly less like a fire and brimstone hell full of pitchforks, and a lot more like the ultimate eternal DMV.
That's a very accurate comparison, actually.
It's highly bureaucratic, it's entirely gray, and it's largely indifferent to your suffering.
You're laughing, but that mundane bureaucratic dread is exactly what terrified the ancient Greeks.
Wait, really? The boredom terrified them?
Yes. They were a vibrant, loud, passionate, sun-drenched culture that valued physical action, glory, and the pleasures of life.
Oh, that makes sense.
To them, a gray eternity of nothingness, of simply drifting without purpose, was a fate far worse than active punishment. It was the ultimate erasure of identity.
The geography of it is fascinating. When you die, Hermes guides your soul down. You arrive at the banks of the river Styx or the Acheron, the rivers of hate and woe. You have to pay Charon, the skeletal ferryman, a single coin that your relatives placed under your tongue when they buried you.
And if you don't have the coin?
If you don't have the coin, you wander the muddy banks for 100 years. He rows you across. You pass Cerberus, the three-headed dog who ensures no living thing enters and no dead thing leaves. You are judged by 3 ancient kings.
Or bureaucracy of death.
Right. And unless you did something terribly, specifically offensive to the gods, like King Tantalus, who tried to feed his own son to the gods and is now standing in a pool of water he could never drink, or Sisyphus, who cheated death and now rolls a boulder up a hill forever in Tartarus, or unless you were a massive, world-altering hero who gets a VIP ticket to the sunny Elysian fields, you just go to the plains of Asphodel.
Which is the vast majority of people.
And Asphodel is just nothing. It's fields of pale, ghostly flowers where millions of shadows drift aimlessly with no memory of their past lives, squeaking like bats.
Squeaking like bats. That's the Homeric description.
And Hades rules this vast gray bureaucracy alongside Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of agriculture.
The dynamic between Hades, Persephone, and Demeter is one of the most crucial structural myths in the canon.
Why is that?
Hades saw Persephone in a meadow, the earth opened up, and he dragged her down to the underworld to be his queen. Demeter's grief was so profound, her rage so absolute, that she completely withdrew her blessings from the earth.
Right. The crops died, the trees withered, and humanity began to starve. Zeus realized that if all the humans died, there would be no one left to burn sacrifices on the altars. So he orders Hades to give her back.
But Hades is clever.
Before Persephone leaves, Hades subtly offers her a pomegranate. She eats a few seeds, maybe 3, maybe 6, depending on the version. Because she consumed the food of the dead, she is legally and magically bound to the underworld.
A contract signed with seeds.
A compromise is struck. She spends part of the year above ground with her mother and part of the year below as the queen of the dead, which beautifully simply explains the seasons to the ancient mind.
Winter is not a meteorological event. It is the physical manifestation of a mother mourning her daughter's return to the dark.
It connects the cosmic cycle of life and death directly to the agricultural cycle of the earth. But as the centuries pass, we see human belief begin to evolve and shift.
The distant, thunder-wielding, aristocratic gods of Mount Olympus start to feel insufficient for the growing spiritual and psychological anxieties of the average person.
Yet the average mortal worker doesn't relate to Zeus throwing lightning bolts. They want a connection to the divine that promises something more intimate, something more hopeful than a gray, memory-wiped eternity in the DMV of Asphodel.
Enter Dionysus.
Enter Dionysus, the god of wine, theater, ecstasy, and madness. His origin is wild. He is twice born. His mortal mother, Semele, was tricked by Hera into asking Zeus to show his true, divine form. When he did, the sheer radiance incinerated her instantly.
But Zeus saves the child.
Zeus rescued the unborn fetus from her ashes, sewed it into his own thigh, and gave birth to Dionysus months later. Dionysus wanders the earth, and he doesn't sit on a throne demanding state-sponsored animal sacrifices.
He's a god of the people.
He brings these underground mystery cults, like the Eleusinian mysteries centered around Demeter and Persephone, and the Orphic mysteries.
Dionysus acts as a profound disruptor to the Olympian order. He provided the deeply personal, emotional connection mortals craved.
What were these mysteries exactly?
They offered secret, guarded rituals that promised a personal spiritual rebirth, a cleansing of the soul, and a significantly better, more conscious afterlife. They cracked the formal, distant marble facade of the state religion.
So it wasn't just about pleasing the king anymore.
Exactly. It wasn't about a king sacrificing a bull to ensure the army wins a battle anymore. It was about the individual's spiritual initiation and salvation.
And reading through the timeline, this is really the beginning of the fade. The geopolitical landscape shifts. The Roman Empire rises, conquers Greece, and they adopt the Greek gods, but they aggressively adapt them.
They rebrand them.
Zeus becomes Jupiter, Ares becomes Mars, Athena becomes Minerva, but they strip away a lot of the messy, raw, poetic human passion. They turn them into rigid symbols of civic duty, law, and imperial expansion.
The poetry is lost to politics.
Then, intellectual powerhouses, philosophers like Plato and Xenophanes, start openly mocking the idea of human-like gods who cheat on their wives, bicker on a mountain, and act more childishly than mortals.
The intellectual and spiritual foundation is actively crumbling. The myths are no longer taken literally by the educated class.
And then the final fatal paradigm shift arrives. Christianity spreads across the empire. It brings a theology of a singular, unseen, omnipotent, completely moral God.
A stark contrast to the Olympians.
It offers a level of moral clarity, comfort, and universal salvation that the chaotic, terrifying Olympians simply never did. Eventually, the Roman Emperor Theodosius issues decrees outlawing pagan sacrifices.
The official end.
The eternal flames in the sanctuaries are forcibly extinguished. The massive marble temples are abandoned, stripped for building materials, and literally crumble into ruins. The reign of the gods is officially over.
But the stories don't die.
No. The temples fall, but the narrative survives. And this is what I want to ask you, and this is where I want to push back on the idea of history being dead if the temple's closed, if the religion was legally outlawed, if absolutely no one is sacrificing a black bull to Poseidon before they get on a cruise ship today.
I would hope not.
Right. Why do we, sitting here right now, millennia later, still know all these stories so intimately? Why are there blockbusters about Heracles? Why is the source text able to trace this direct, unbroken line from the castration of Uranus to the superhero movies we watch today?
Because the myths evolved. They survived their own religion by shedding the literal theology and transforming into the foundational structural language of the human condition.
They became embedded in our cultural DNA.
Exactly. Monks who were ideologically opposed to the gods still meticulously copied the texts because the poetry was too beautiful to lose. The Renaissance revived them as the pinnacle of art and humanist expression.
And then psychology got a hold of them.
Yes. Modern psychologists, specifically figures like Carl Jung, looked at these stories and realized they are not histories. They are deeply ingrained psychological archetypes. They give us a precise vocabulary for our deepest, most unspoken fears, our towering hubris, our terrifying capacity for destructive love, and our self-destructive tendencies.
Like Oedipus.
The story of Oedipus isn't just a grim tale about a cursed king. It provides a framework for understanding buried trauma, denial, and the subconscious.
And Prometheus.
The story of Prometheus isn't just about stolen fire. It is the archetype of every scientist, every hacker, pushing the boundaries of what is permitted, risking the wrath of authority to bring forbidden knowledge to the masses.
So the marble columns cracked, the gold was stripped from the statues, and the altars went completely cold. But the stories built an invisible empire in our minds that has completely outlasted any physical stone temple the Greeks ever built.
That is exactly it.
That is just incredible to wrap your head around. They colonized our imagination.
They endure simply because they hold a mirror up to us. And when we look in that mirror, we see both our breathtaking potential for greatness and our inevitable tragic flaws. We see ourselves writ large across the stars.
Let's summarize the massive journey we've been on today. We started in a terrifying, yawning void of chaos, a gaping nothingness before time. We watched the violent elemental reigns of the Titans and the Olympians, seeing how they established cosmic order through suppression and intergenerational trauma.
Oh, violent beginning.
We saw humanity shivering in the mud, finally given the spark of technology and autonomy by Prometheus, and punished with the release of sorrow from Pandora's jar. We watched incredibly gifted demigods like Heracles, Theseus, and Jason struggle desperately under the crushing burden of divine expectations, only to be ultimately destroyed by their mortal limits.
Tragic figures.
We saw the inescapable algorithmic web of fate absolutely decimate the house of Thebes and blind a noble king. We stood in the blood-soaked burning ashes of Troy, witnessing a horrific war fought for pride that left no true victors, only traumatized survivors.
What a sobering realization.
And finally, we saw the gods themselves slowly fade from the altars, retreating into the pages of literature and the depths of our modern psychological framework.
The core value of examining this massive, sprawling narrative isn't to memorize a convoluted family tree or pass a history test.
Definitely not.
It is to recognize that these aren't just ancient fairy tales invented to entertain children. They are the earliest, most robust psychological blueprints of humanity. They teach us how to endure suffering when the universe seems indifferent.
Yeah.
They teach us how to face the inevitability of fate with dignity. And they help us understand our own deeply flawed yet endlessly striving nature.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with, building right off something we discussed earlier about Hesiod's ages.
Oh, the 5 ages?
Yes. The source text explicitly notes that Hesiod, the ancient poet, believed his society, and by extension ours, was living deep in the Iron Age, a miserable era of endless toil, sorrow, broken bonds, and shallow oaths, where humanity is in a state of slow, tragic decay, waiting for Zeus to wipe the slate clean.
A very pessimistic view.
Very. But remember, the Greeks believed that the glorious, magnificent, heroic age briefly interrupted that steady decline, giving mortals a sudden, blinding flash of divine power and capability.
I see where you're going with this.
I want you to sit with this and ponder it. Could we, today, be standing on the verge of a new heroic age? With our modern, terrifyingly powerful divine tools, artificial intelligence that mimics consciousness, genetic engineering that allows us to literally edit the code of life, the ability to split the atom, are we becoming the new demigods, capable of bending the cosmos to our will?
That's a heavy question.
Or are we, much like Prometheus handing over the fire, without fully understanding the destructive consequences, simply building the very tools of our own inevitable Iron Age tragedy? Are we arrogantly giving ourselves the fire that will eventually burn our world to ash?
That is a profoundly unsettling yet necessary question to carry forward. The tools we wield change dramatically over the millennia, but the hubris drive in the hand that holds them remains remarkably, dangerously consistent.
It really does. Thank you so much for taking this incredible deep journey with us today. Keep questioning the stories you hear, keep exploring the shadows, and keep diving deep. The world is vastly more complex than a jagged white line on an X-ray or a simple bedtime story. Sometimes you have to look directly into the yawning void of nothingness to figure out exactly who you are and what you are truly capable of. We'll see you on the next deep dive.